You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, we have some news here that's close to home for you. The Trump administration has gone on full-on attack against Judge Boseberg, who is the chief judge in the D.C. District Court. This is somebody who you know well, who you've worked with during your time as a federal prosecutor. Can you explain why the Trump administration is going after this judge?
Well, it's hard for me to answer the question why the Trump administration does anything beyond they think it's in the best interest of the Trump administration, because when they don't like the rulings, the opinions of judges, what do? They attack the judges in any number of ways. Usually it's by, calling them radical left-wing lunatic judges, including the judges who were appointed by Republican presidents and Donald Trump himself. And now they're taking a new approach. They filed a so-called complaint against Chief Judge Jeb Boseberg. He is the chief judge of the federal district court in Washington, D.C. I've known him for decades. I worked with him. I supervised him when he was a federal homicide prosecutor at the U.S. Attorney's Office. I tried cases with him. I've testified before him in cases where he was the presiding judge. So, he is extraordinarily well-known and well-regarded in D.C. criminal justice circles. Brian, he was first appointed as a judge by President George W. Bush. That was to the
that radical leftist,
left-wing lunatic we all acknowledge, right? That
Right.
was to the Superior Court for the District of Columbia. Then he was appointed to the Federal District Court for the District of Columbia by President Obama. He is well regarded on both sides of the aisle, as they say. And here is the complaint that Pam Bondi's chief of staff, a curious person to lodge a complaint against a federal judge, that might have something to do with the fact that Pam Bondi just fired the chief ethics officer at the Department of Justice. So her chief of staff was left to file this complaint, air quotes around the word complaint. What the complaint alleges, Brian, is that at a judicial conference, a conference of U.S. federal court judges, including Supreme Court justices, Judge Boseberg was overheard to say, as part of some remarks that were being made at the conference, that he has a concern that the administration would disregard federal court orders or rulings which could lead to a constitutional crisis. Now, before I go any further, that's the allegation. That is the complaint. And they say, oh my goodness, Judge Boseberg has to be investigated. He's undermined the confidence that the people will have in the federal judiciary.
So a judge voicing concern that the administration is ignoring the orders being handed down by judges is somehow him being off base.
Yeah, he said, now this was back in March that he allegedly made these comments at the judicial conference. And he said, look, he had a concern that the administration would disregard rulings and that could lead to a constitutional...
But they did. That's exactly what they've done.
Brian, you just predicted exactly where I want to go, because about a week ago, the Washington Post reported they did a deep dive expose on what the Trump administration's Department of Justice has been doing. It might be worth showing our viewers one of the helpful graphs that the Washington Post published. How Trump officials are allegedly defying the courts. Not complying with court orders, 38 cases. Giving false or misleading information, 9 times. Withholding evidence, 5 times. Creating pretext to go around court orders, 5 times. And so for somebody to say that, oh my goodness, a judge suggested that the Trump administration might violate court orders, well, it looks like the Trump administration has been violating court orders. And at the judicial conference, I mean, one of the things that the federal courts have to contend with is what in the hell do they do with a runaway, corrupt, criminal administration when they refuse to abide by court orders. So this is hardly misconduct, certainly not the kind of conduct that would require an investigation of Judge Boseberg's comments. I just told you the entirety of what this complaint alleges he said at the judicial conference. That's it. And so what are they asking? Well, first of all, there are procedures in place, there are rules, there are regulations that provide for investigations of alleged judicial misconduct. And the process involves notifying or filing a complaint with the chief judge of the Federal Circuit Court for the District of Columbia, which sits atop the Federal District Court, which is where Judge Boseberg is the chief. And so this complaint was sent to the chief judge for the D.C. Federal Circuit Court, and they're asking for multiple things, multiple remedies here for this egregious misconduct. They want a special investigative committee appointed to look into this, egregious misconduct. They want corrective measures to be taken, including, get this, that he should be taken off of all case assignments related to the case of JGG versus Trump. That is the, improper deportation of Venezuelan immigrants to El Salvador. It's not a surprise that they want to start trying to kick Judge Boseberg off cases that relate to Donald Trump. And they also want other disciplinary action to be considered, including, you guessed it, possible impeachment. Brian, here is what I equate this bullshit letter to. When Donald Trump told President Zelensky, I know you want the money that Congress has appropriated and directed be given to you so you can protect your people, the Ukrainian people, against unlawful Russian aggression. But I need a favor, though. I want you to announce an investigation into my political opponent. You don't have to conduct an investigation, just announce it for the PR value. That is what Donald Trump communicated in substance to President Zelensky. This is another variation of let's just announce that there should be an investigation into Judge Boseberg and hope that fools the gullible.
Right. And so now, in terms of this getting kind of elevated to the Circuit Court of Appeals to determine whether or not he's done something wrong, what happens in that process? Like, the Circuit Court, of course, is going to recognize that this is complete bullshit, but are they the final arbiter of whether he's committed some violation, and then it stops after that, as far as the judicial remedy is concerned?
Brian, they are the first and primary arbiter of whether there's any there. And I'm going to be fully candid. I don't know if there is a procedural process by which the Trump administration, Pam Bondi and her chief of staff, could move beyond a determination by the chief judge of the Federal Circuit Court in D.C. that, no, we are dismissing this without taking any action. There was no misconduct. There is no need for further investigation. I don't know if there is some kind of, because this is not a legal proceeding. We're not now in court in a case proper. This is all kind of administrative and governed by some pretty dense regulations that are rarely, deployed. So I'm not so sure if that would be the last stop. I do think that would effectively be the last stop, and Donald Trump's people, I'm sure, will forever be holding up this complaint, bullshit though it may be, saying, you see, Judge Boseberg engaged in misconduct, even though there is no there.
Right. I mean, what you're describing is basically circular logic. It's where they'll lodge a complaint, point to the complaint that they've lodged as evidence that he's done something wrong. And by the way, they did the same thing with the stolen election claims, where they will go out there and they'll tell all of their supporters that there was massive fraud in the 2020 election, and then they'll poll those people who they've just manipulated and lied to. The polls will reflect that the vast majority of their supporters do believe that there was misconduct in the election, and then they'll point to those polls and they'll say, well, we have to just listen to our constituents. Our constituents are out here saying that they're concerned about fraud in the election without saying the reality of the situation, which is that their constituents are concerned because they made them concerned. And so that's the exact same thing that the Trump administration is doing here. They will sully the name and reputation of a judge that they don't like, and they'll put forward these complaints and then point to the fact that there is complaints lodged against them as evidence that they've done something wrong.
Yeah, this is Trump's playbook, right? They just attack his enemies, his perceived enemies, his opponent, and then use his very attack to validate his claim that they did something wrong, even when there is no evidence of it. This is also akin, Brian, to what we have seen Donald Trump do for a very long time. How many times has he said that he's going to prosecute Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, Tish James and Alvin Bragg, Jack Smith, what does he call him, pencil neck Senator Adam Schiff. He's gone after Chris Krebs. He's gone after Miles Taylor. Most recently, he said, we're going to prosecute John Brennan, former CIA director, James Comey, former FBI director. Now, what do we have? We're going to go after Hillary. We're going to go after Obama. We're going to prosecute Kamala Harris. Brian, he has not prosecuted a single one of those people. Why? Because they've committed no crimes and there is no case to be prosecuted. But the message goes out that he's saying all of these people should be prosecuted. They must have committed crimes, right? No, wrong. So it's all about what he can spew into the public square and hope that it, penetrates at least the minds of the gullible.
Glenn, what has the reaction been among either your former colleagues or whoever it may be in this world? Because, like I said, you've had a long career where you've worked directly with Judge Boseberg. And so this sense among the prosecutorial community at what's going on right now.
Disgust, outrage, and we mourn for our Department of Justice because our entire careers, myself and others who kind of are of my vintage, who spent decades at the Department of Justice and who retired, we did the work of the American people. We never represented the interests of a president, corrupt or otherwise. And we really do mourn for the Department of Justice because it's being taken over by lapdogs, flunkies, and sycophants. I mean, so many of the people like this chief of staff that filed this bogus complaint against Judge Boseberg, these are people who have been at the Department of Justice for just a few months. And they don't know what they're doing. It's pretty clear by the substance of some of the stuff they're churning out. They don't know what they're doing. They don't care about what they're doing. And they're not representing the interests of the American people. They're representing the interests of a corrupt president of the United States. And those of us who, so valued our time, took very seriously our responsibility on behalf of the American people at the Department of Justice, we mourn what we are seeing done to the Department of Justice in the Trump administration.
Glenn, what do you presume the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals are going to say when they get this complaint?
I presume they will simply say these allegations do not warrant an investigation and close the matter out because there really is no provable misconduct. And in fact, Judge Boseberg proved to be dead on with the way the Trump administration is now conducting itself in federal court.
And finally, do you have any indication as to how long this might take? Because I presume that the longer the administration is able to drag this out, the more they can prosecute this case in the court of public opinion and denigrate Judge Boseberg's reputation here, which is ultimately their goal.
Yeah, I don't know that there are any official deadlines in the rules and procedures that govern this kind of a complaint. I have a feeling the chief judge of the Federal Circuit Court in D.C. will want to dispose of this promptly. So it really could be within a matter of days or a couple of weeks that we see this come to a conclusion, which, again, I suspect will be discarding it out of hand.
All right. Well, we will, of course, bring any updates to you as soon as we get them. For those who are watching, if you are not yet subscribed and you want to support our work completely free, please subscribe to our channels. The links to both of those are right here on the screen. Again, it's the best way to support our work. Doesn't cost anything, and it's a great way to support independent media more broadly. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.